Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Michigan Jazz Pianist, Vocalist, Composer, and Arranger Hannah Baiardi. We caught up with her in early March to talk about her latest 2021 CD, Straight from the Soul, out on March 22nd, 2021. This Detroit native has been studying and playing jazz since the age of 3 and has a large range of music that has influenced her over the years, from new age to R&B and contemporary jazz. She learned by ear and began transcribing Oscar Peterson by ear at the age of 7. She went on to attend the University of Michigan Jazz Studies program, studying with the likes of Geri and Benny Green. She has a great story. Get to know her and enjoy.
Hannah, thanks for taking a minute for Neon Jazz today.
Of course, my pleasure.
We're on Monday, and it's March 8th, and it's International Women's Day, and I want to know from you, it's timely, we're talking right now about your album and about your life in music. Talk to me a little bit about what the day means for you.
Yeah, this day is an important one, and it's one that I'm really, proud to have an album that's being released in this time period in a greater sense, but also in the month of March. Straight from the Soul will be officially out on all platforms on March 22nd. That I think it speaks to, too, the people who I chose to work with, of which my rhythm section on a lot of the tracks are women in jazz that I greatly admire. One of them, Marion Hayden, has been a longtime mentor of mine back in the days at the University of Michigan when I studied with her. And Karen Tomalis is an amazing Detroit-based drummer and percussionist, and I'm really fortunate to work with such fabulous women in jazz. Speaking of
a new album, Straight from the Soul, it is coming out on March 22nd, and it's very triumphant as far as I'm concerned, because I remember this time last year, all these albums were coming out. No one knew the world was shutting down. Do you look at this one-year anniversary and think, man, so much has happened, but you have an album coming out, the world's getting to a better place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think definitely the hope and the energy is in the air, and it is uplifting. So I think having an album at this time of kind of momentous energy is great to for me and those involved on the album. A year ago is when I started working on the album, a couple tracks had been hanging around and I've been keeping them a few years, just saving them for this big moment for the album. But it's been about a year or so in the making, a little over. And so having the energy of the time kind of, at different points throughout months, there were hiccups and there were some setbacks, and maybe we didn't get to rehearses frequently or in person. And so that, presented some challenges. But I think it's a testament right to the artists on the album, and our willingness to see a project through and to have something worth going forward for. So if it's an album and it's a project, I'm one of these people that I really sink my teeth into it and I see it through. And I am just so grateful for everyone's work, the sound engineers and the artists and the cover design artists who all came together despite individual circumstances to make this album a reality.
It's a wonderful sound. It sounds like you really did enjoy making this. Talk to me a little bit about what you hope the actual listener gets from either buying this or downloading this album.
I hope the album has the capacity to take people to a more mellow, more calm, comforting place. And I hope it's personal. Some songs I've heard from some people who have listened to previews, like one of the songs, The Windmills of Your Mind or The Summer Knows, has a certain nostalgia for a certain demographic or certain, groups of people who grew up, listening to Alan and Marilyn Bergman and have some emotional, connection to their songwriting or Michel Legrand. I'm one of those people. I kind of consider myself an old soul. My sound very, I like going back and listening to the greats over the time, not necessarily current, but more, and that's kind of part of a jazz, listening back for influences. So these kind of artists really spoke to me, and so I hope that, my emotional veins kind of in the arrangements might awaken some feelings, some emotions in the listener.
So talk to me a little bit about musical influences, A, and B, mentors that you've had in your life that have been huge.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's one I love talking about because it's a mixed bag for me. There's a lot of fabulous jazz artists out there that are really, really good in maybe swing or a certain area or, progressive. I'm one of these artists, I think that, I'm still finding my sound to this day. It's evolving, but, I'm sort of non-trad in that I draw from a myriad influences, anywhere from Babyface to Stevie Wonder, Tina Marie, Dinah Krall's in there. So there's kind of a mixed bag Sade. And I kind of, when I think of my influences, I go back to what I, grew up listening to as a kid, as a child. And I know like Barbra Streisand and Michael Franks were always blasting. My parents are avid musical listeners, and they were really good at exposing me to a variety of beautiful music, be it Motown, soul from, where I'm from, near Detroit. So having these influences, and then jazz I was exposed to when I was around 7 and started doing jazz transcriptions. The professor, U of M Flint, Brian de Blasio. From there, that's when I started getting steeped into the jazz tradition and found kind of my sound sort of new age jazz soul. It's like a fusion of the elements that really have shaped me. And your question about mentors, studying with Brian de Blasio has been incredible for the last, I'd say like 18 years, from when I was 7 up until when I went to the University of Michigan to study jazz. Professionally, he has been just an incredible mentor in exposing me to different jazz artists and to helping me develop my ear and learn how to transcribe and really come into my improvisatory voice. Additionally, when I got to Michigan, I had the wonderful opportunity, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to study with mentors, such as Geri and Benny Green and Ellen Rowe, who really, brought such, wisdom to their artistry, to their teaching. And I'm just incredibly honored that I got to study with them.
So you have these different lines of music that go into your sound. I mean, you got soul and R&B and, kind of acoustic sounds from film music. How did you arrive at this sound? A lot of people, it takes a while for them to arrive at their voice and how they want to project it. How did this come out?
I think it came about kind of through a natural process of kind of tearing away and scraping away at everything that I thought I was supposed to sound like. We're so often told, pick a camp, classical, okay, R&B, okay, jazz, and kind of here are your influences, and, that's how you're going to have success, sound with these people. And it's natural, right? We idolize people. We have artists who we look up to, want to emulate, and that's completely natural and valid. And I'm included in that group. But I think from a time from when I was real little, I kind of knew I was supposed to be different. I kind of knew that I had a sound that I wanted to get closer and closer to. And so my last album got me a little bit closer, and this album got me even a little bit closer, I think, to what my innate Hannah sound is. And it's something that, in talking to people, I'm really curious about. I'm like, what is this sound? And I get different answers from different people I talk to about it. So that kind of reinforces that, hey, maybe I'm onto something here that, if it's kind of ambiguous, maybe that's a good thing in today's age. So I'm just hoping to get closer and closer to it as I continue writing music.
What was the first live jazz show you ever saw?
One of the first shows that actually really stood out to me, it's not jazz per se, but it is new age, and he does have a lot of folk, blues, jazz roots, and that's George Winston. And I think I was around like 8 or 9, and I saw it downtown Detroit. And it was very moving to me because my whole family loves his music, and he's another one of these artists who draws on such a variety of artists, ranging from jazz and roots and folk and country and soul. And so I think it showed me a way for, there's an artist creating a niche from themselves and kind of their own sound. And that really inspired me to, in later years, do the same thing.
When you wake up every day and think about being a creative, artistic individual, what do you look forward to the most as being a musician?
I think the ability to be a conduit for joy, both for yourself when you play. The music does something to you. It shakes you up. It gets into your soul, gets into your body. It moves you, and then to be able to have that effect or move somebody else emotionally or spiritually, whatever it may be, on whatever level. I think that's just something that's so timeless and deep, and that's what keeps me writing, because I feel like there's always going to be more music. I can't, promise what it will sound like or how it will be, described, but I always know that's going to be a continuous kind of conversation between me and the music. And I feel like I learn through the music. The music speaks through me, and every artist, I imagine, has a very individual, innate relationship with their conduit, which I like to call my piano. We each have our own kind of conduit, be it voice or writing or an instrument. But I think knowing that the piano will always be there for me, being my sense of home, is just something I look forward to every day.
So talk to me a little bit about Detroit. You know, I'm always fascinated with other cities around the country. You know, obviously Kansas City has our own set of lore, but talk to me a little bit about the scene and kind of what it's like to be coming from a jazz world in Detroit.
It's an eclectic, alive and well, and it's, you know, it's one of these communities that it forges ahead. You know, we have every community has setbacks, but we keep pushing. That's the unique thing about Detroit is we keep evolving and pushing, and we have, you know, so many talented artists and a real deep legacy, of course, as many know about jazz and Motown. And I see that glimmer and that same sense of commitment to the craft in so many young artists coming up. You know, even young artists and colleagues and peers of mine are mentoring those even younger than them. And you just see that sense of carrying on the jazz torch, handing it down to the next generation. You see that in our education and our programming, you know, in summer camps the kids attend, like myself, you know, coming up through, you know, Impulse or you know, different programs to the University of Michigan in liaison with like the Detroit Jazz Fest. So there's a lot of crossover between like programming and education that you see. But at the center of it are great mentors, you know, mentors that care deeply about passing on the next generation of jazz.
You know, COVID-19 has provided a level of like self-reflection and learning things and figuring things out. What have you learned over this time in quarantine about yourself that maybe you didn't know, or what has gotten stronger?
I think being alone has forced me to dive more deeply into myself and to seek out community, because when it's taken away from you, we want it even more. And so something I felt was this desperate need to connect with other artists, jazz artists, you know, artists that are doing their own thing, I like to say, kind of carving their own path, their own niche. And so I started something called Hannah's Corner, which is a monthly live stream, and it stands for especially women and, you know, underrepresented groups to get together and talk a little bit about how can we support each other and let's listen to each other's music. And so I think that sense of community has actually been bolstered through the pandemic, which is now in turn allow me to have a greater network and have more colleagues and friends to, you know, collaborate with in future.
What do you hope we all realize about the absence of live music when we get back? Like when you get back on stage, we're in the crowd. What do you hope we realize about this time away?
I think what I hope people would realize is, you know, just how valuable and important arts are, and especially music and especially jazz, to our well-being, our sense of connecting to each other. You know, we've gone through such a divisive, very viscerally divisive time right now at so many levels. And when music is played, you know, all that kind of washes away. We start to see the common humanity between each other. We start to tune in, you know, vibrationally just to the same frequency, even be it for 3 to 5 minutes of a song. And I think that is so potent and so untapped, and we haven't really, I think, even begun to scratch the surface of what we can do with music to heal. And I think we're going to be seeing some things now with the pandemic and the, you know, the resurgence, you know, coming out of this, what music can do and how artists can really touch humanity. So I'm really excited about that.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I think I'm myself. I think I'm Hannah B. You know, I think I'm somebody who is bold enough to maybe go out on a limb and try something new, honor their sound, shake things up a little bit. You know, this is an industry that is changing daily, and we have to keep up with it as artists. And I think kind of along for the ride, but. You know, I just hope I can remember to have fun and to, you know, be true to myself at the end of the day.
Hannah, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage. I appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. Pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Detroit, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Hannah for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.